That afternoon began with the slow, unhurried pulse of the countryside, the kind of rural quiet that makes even the wind seem contemplative. Golden sunlight slid lazily across the cornfields, settling in a warm sheet over the Newell family's weather-worn rooftop. The season's last winds grazed the ground as though reluctant to leave, carrying the faint smell of dried corn husks and the earth's lingering warmth. It was the sort of day that promised nothing extraordinary, the kind of predictable calm in which life usually hides its sharpest turns. Inside the house, the wooden floorboards held the heat from the morning sun, radiating a gentle warmth that felt, at first glance, like a blessing. James had always believed that homes like theirs, patched up over decades, crooked in places, familiar to the point of blindness, possessed a quiet strength. They had weathered storms, sheltered secrets, and swallowed fear. They had seen joy, loss, and dozens of ordinary days exactly like this one, except for today, which would unravel the silence one step at a time. James was repairing a stripped hinge on the back door when the phone rang. The landline, a relic his father refused to replace, shivered against the kitchen counter. Its shrill tone sliced through the afternoon stillness like something foreign, something too aggressive for the house's quiet bones. He nearly ignored it. His father rarely received calls, and strangers even less. But the third ring carried a tone, an insistence, that tugged at James's attention. He wiped the sawdust from his hands, crossed the kitchen, and lifted the receiver. Hello? A pause, a faint breath, then a voice, unfamiliar, low, measured. Is this the Newell residence? The question felt harmless, but something inside James tightened. Yes. Who's speaking? Another breath. I think you're the one I'm supposed to talk to, and just like that, the house's quiet rearranged itself, as if bracing for a storm that didn't show up on any weather chart. Outside, Diep stood in the garden, her hands still damp with the soil she had been turning over. Gardening steadied her, the repetition of digging, loosening, watering. Each motion a small tether to peace. She was thinking about dinner, about whether the tomatoes would ripen in time, about whether James would want tea later. Her thoughts were soft, simple, human. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Familiar in a way that made her heart stop and her breath break in her chest. She turned, and there he was. The artist. The drifter with tired eyes and a past too heavy to name. A man whose presence had once been a lifeline, then a threat, then a mystery. He stood on the edge of her garden like someone caught between running and collapsing. Deep, he said, his voice barely carrying. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. The afternoon, once gentle, tightened around her like the grip of a memory she had tried too long to bury. By the time James stepped outside, the air had changed. He could feel it, the dense, pressurized stillness that often precedes a confession or a disaster. His father, John, stepped onto the porch behind him. The old man's gait was slow but sure. His presence alone could shift the energy of the household, a man built from years of hardship, stubbornness, and expectations that rarely left room for tenderness. The stranger's eyes flicked toward James, then to John, then back to Diep. Something like guilt passed through his expression, deep, raw, unguarded. James moved instinctively, stepping closer to Diep. "What's going on?" The stranger swallowed hard. "I didn't come here to cause trouble. But I had to come." John's jaw clenched. "You shouldn't be here." His voice was low, controlled, the tone he used when anger simmered instead of burned. The stranger nodded, as though he accepted the condemnation. "I know." Diep's hands shook. She clasped them together to hide it. "Then why?" she finally whispered. The artist's gaze softened painfully. "Because I heard something today. Something that involves you. And him." He motioned toward James. "And I couldn't stay away." The wind stilled. Even the cornfields seemed to lean closer. The stranger's story unfolded slowly, like a reluctant confession, each word weighted. He had crossed paths with a man who knew John. A man who carried information that should have never traveled past state borders. A man who believed secrets would always stay buried, but secrets have their own lifespan. They resurface when least expected. He told them of paperwork, of a name linked to an event long forgotten by everyone except those who lived it. He spoke of a file that mentioned the Newells, of a choice John had made years ago, a choice that reshaped the family's path without them even knowing. James felt the ground shift beneath him. "What does this have to do with us?" The stranger hesitated. "Because the past is coming back. And it's looking for you." Diep felt something inside her fracture, not from fear, but from recognition. The stranger's arrival wasn't an accident. It was a signal. The peace they had built was now under inspection by time itself. John's eyes darkened, heavy with years of things unsaid. His silence wasn't avoidance. "It was confirmation, Dad?" James asked, his voice a mix of confusion and growing betrayal. But John didn't answer. He simply looked at the stranger, not with anger now, but with something closer to resignation. "You should have stayed away," the old man murmured. The artist shook his head. "I owed them the truth." John exhaled, slow, tired. "Truth is a luxury. And this family doesn't get luxuries." The sky began to shift, its warm gold fading into a muted gray. The wind picked up again, but now it carried a different scent, the kind that often precedes rain. The house behind them, once just a backdrop to routine, now felt like a vault. Every wall seemed to hold echoes of conversations never finished, decisions never explained, fears never spoken aloud. Diep drew in a shaky breath. What happens now? The stranger looked at her with eyes that held apology and urgency. Now, you prepare. Because the past doesn't knock unless it plans to enter. The story didn't end that day. It began with a phone call, with a pair of footsteps behind a woman watering her garden. With a family forced to face the history they didn't know was theirs, and with a stranger, a wandering artist, who carried the final fragment of a truth capable of reshaping everything they thought they understood. Some endings don't arrive with closure. Some endings arrive with footsteps, and a father who refuses to let his son breathe.